Hi Bookworms, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all well. Today I am giving you my TBR for Game of Thrones readathon. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So like I said, we are doing Game of Thrones readathon. This I did last year in November. It was the first 2 weeks and it was the origin story quest, which basically was just a little mini readathon getting prepared for this one. So it's run by Dasha over at Mythic Pages. Obviously there are other hosts on here, especially as in this quest we have got a few more paths that we could choose from. So in the origin story we just had like the main paths and you chose which one you wanted to be. So for me, I chose the path of Stark and I went through little quests to get myself into the Stark camp, and if you completed all of your quests then you can move on into this story. Now obviously it doesn't matter if you've done the origin story, you can still take part in this readathon. You can just join this even if you haven't done the previous readathon. But when I saw that we were finally doing the main quest, I was like, yes, I am definitely doing this for sure. So we have the option of sticking with the path we were with in the origin story, or we can change the path. Now if we do change paths, we have to do like a betrayal prompt, and that just takes over one of the prompts that you've gone into the new path. However, if you want to stick with the path you were in the origin story, you don't have to do that. Now I love Starks, they were my favourite when I watched Game of Thrones, so I was like, I'm going to stick with them, you know, I'm not going to faff around. So I don't have to do the betrayal prompt. Now with this readathon, as what it was in the first readathon, we all have like a group prompt. However, the group prompt varies. So if you did the origin story, then your group prompt is a specific one. If you just joined this readathon and you haven't done the origin story, you get a separate group prompt. So there's 2 different group prompts depending on which one you are, and then whichever path you take in, you then have your, I think, yeah, so there's 4 main path prompts for whatever path you're on. So to get onto the prompts and to get on with what book I'm reading for those prompts, so the group prompt is for me in particular, because I did the origin story, is to read a book from a series, so continue on from a series. So it could be the second book, it could be the last book, whichever book you choose, it has to be a continuation from a series. Obviously, if this is the first readathon you're doing, then you have to read a series to the start of a series. So for me, because I did the origin story, I'm continuing on with a series. So I'm going to be reading Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, which is the 3rd book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. So I was meant to read this in January, but I just didn't. I was just not in the mood, because when I finished Season Storm, I was a little bit miffed just because Mal was really annoying me. But a lot of people said to continue on. A lot of people said, you know, he is whiny, but it gets better, and you don't sort of follow a lot of him for a while. And they said this really went out of a bang, and it explains things. And I got told I need to read this before I go into the King of Scars duology, because something happens in here that ties in with that. So I'm like, okay, and I'm desperate to read that book, so I was like, right, I might as well finish the series. So that's what we're going to do. I do think I'm going to enjoy this. It's like the 3rd book in the trilogy, so I know it's going to be everything's going to be tied in. I obviously know the world building and everything and the characters, so this is going to be a very quick read for me. So yeah, I'm really excited to finally finish it, just so I can continue on the like duology that I really want to do. So that's for the origin story, to continue a series, which is the group prompt. And I've got my little trusty tablet here to remind me of the prompts. So then going into my path, which is dark, I obviously have 4 main prompts for that path. So the first like sort of path that I am on, the first sort of quest, is I need to feed the direwolves, and so that prompt is read a book with an animal in the title or on the cover or in the book. So I have gone for Nevernight by J. Christoph. I've been meaning to read this. It's been sitting on my shelves and I've been staring at it thinking I should read it. Like, I do like his writing. I read Empire of the Vampire. I'm currently reading Illuminate and I really am enjoying his writing. So I was like, let's just pick this book up. You never know, I might love it. I might continue the series. So I've chosen this because we have got a crow. We've also got a cat in the cover, and that looks like probably another crow here. Now I am not 100% sure whether we actually have animals in the book. It doesn't particularly say, but it does say either have an animal in the title or on the cover or in the book. So it is on the cover, so I'm doing what it says. So to pretty much say what this is about, Mia Correa is only 10 years old when she is given her first lesson in death. Destined to destroy empires, the child raised in shadows made a promise on the day she lost everything to avenge herself on those that shattered her world. But the chance to strike again much powerful enemies would be fleeting, and Mia must become a weapon without equal. Before she seeks vengeance, she must seek training among the infamous assassins of the Red Church of Itrea. Inside the church's halls, Mia must prove herself against the deadliest of opponents and survive the tutelage of murderers, liars, and demons at the heart of a murder cult. The church is no ordinary school, but Mia is no ordinary student. Firstly, there's like a little cult going on. We've got, stuff. Which I've had a little quick, go through this book, and it sounds really good. Like the first page, I was like, ooh, that sounds quite steamy. Like, I didn't go in, but what I was reading, it sounded quite steamy. And I was like, that's just like the first page. What's going on? So I'm very intrigued. This fits the prompt for Feed the Direwolves because we have gone, we got 2-3 animals on the cover. Whether there's an animal in the book, that would be brilliant if it was, because then I can say I double whammied. But that's for that prompt. Then after we filled that quest, we then go to go to the wall, and going through that, it's very snowy, it's very wintry, and so the prompt is the winter sky, and that is to read a book with a grey or silver cover. And so that I have chosen City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare, which is book 2 in the Mortal Instruments series. So I'm going with this because we've got very grey sort of cover, also the actual author's name is, and that is silver. So that's what I'm going with, because I do have a few silvery covered books, but I wasn't in the mood for them. Like, I am participating in another readathon and I just don't want to read big books. I want to read books that either I've continued on in the series or they're like easy reads for me. So I'm going with that because I have said that I would like to try and get through my Shadowhunters series that I've got on my shelves. So I read City of Bones last year. I have actually read the last chapter of the book just to remind myself of this book, of what happened in there, because it continues from this book. But we're going with that. It's not a complete full silvery grey colour. You could probably say it's a bit bluey, but I'm going with it because it looks grey to me, and that is silver. So we're going with that. So that is the Winter Sky prompt, and then we carry on. Once we finish that quest, we then visit John before he heads to the war, and so for that is read a book that includes travel. So I've chosen this book. It's a romance and it involves travelling because it is a road trip. I've put this here because this also is going to be for a prompt in the other readathon I'm doing. So I was like, oh, perfect. I can at least fit 2 prompts from 2 different readathons. So I'm going to be reading The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary, who is the author of The Flat Share. I read The Flat Share in 2020 and I absolutely loved it. It was amazing. I loved it. It was just probably my favourite romance I read that year. And so I picked up The Road Trip because it was her new release. I was really excited for it, and I was just like, yes, I'm definitely going to read it. I never read it. Like I said, I was going to read it in 2021. I never did. So we're finally getting there because she has got a new book coming out this year called The No Show. Like, they're not a series or anything, but I was just like, I really want to read this. So then when I get the new book, you know, it's not standing around. So this is basically one car, 5 people, a whole lot of history. So it's a road trip to Scotland, so rural Scotland. I'll read what it's about because it's probably easy to read the synopsis rather than explain. But Addie and her sister are about to embark on an epic road trip to a friend's wedding in rural Scotland. The playlist is all planned and the snacks are packed. But not long after setting off, a car slams into the back of theirs. The driver is none other than Addie's ex, Dylan, who she's avoided since their traumatic breakup 2 years ago. Dylan and his best mate are heading to the wedding too, and they've totaled their car, so Addie has no choice but to offer them a ride. The car is soon jam-packed full of luggage and secrets, and with 400 miles ahead of them, Dylan and Addie can't avoid confronting the very messy history of their relationship. Will they make it to the wedding on time, and more importantly, is this really the end of the road for Addie and Dylan? So basically this is all set in the car, and they're all driving to Scotland for their friend's wedding. And I think how I've seen people talk about this book, it sort of goes back and forward. So we have the whole what happened, like the messy breakup, and like, you know, why they broke up, and then we have present day where whether like they get over everything and they fall back in love, or whether it's a complete done deal and all that. Like, I do know Beth Leigh writes romance books, so I'm kind of thinking this is going to be like a second chance romance, probably like an enemies to lovers than second chance romance, depending on how it is. That's what I'm thinking. But yeah, I'm very excited for this, and I think it's going to be like a fun ride. And then lastly, after we finish that quest, we then go and help Arya practice sparring. And so for this, we have to read a book about someone in training. Now, in the actual Discord chat, it does explain a bit more in depth what these prompts mean. And so for about someone in training, it could be about going to school, like, you know, doing tests, stuff like that. It could be like quests, like there's different things to what you would consider as training. And so because they suggested about school and tests, I went with The Last Graduate, Lesson 2 of the Scholomance by Naomi Novik, which this is the second book to the Deadly, oh my god, what was it? A Deadly Education. Now, I loved A Deadly Education. I actually read it from the library and absolutely loved it. And so when I saw that there was a second book, I definitely pre-ordered it. I still need to own A Deadly Education because it's like a duology that I want to keep. But basically, in A Deadly Education, we follow our main character, Elle, who is at the Scholomance, and basically it's a Scholomance where it tests your magic abilities and all that, and you have to go through all of these horrendous tests that pretty much not many people will live through. And if you go through them all and you manage to graduate, then you become like, you know, a done deal sort of thing. But Elle has got a very rare power, and it's a power that is quite monstrous, I suppose, but because of her power, like, it's very, very powerful, but she attracts all of these monsters. Like, they just come for her because they can see she's powerful, and basically they want to exterminate her. So she's a massive big threat to them. And so, you know, she's going through school, she's dealing with all of these attacks from these monsters. She's also very much not someone who will make friends, but as you get into the book, she starts making some friends. They sort of become an alliance to try and fight these things. I think there's also a potential that people are setting these monsters at her. Like, it's not just tests, it's people trying to get rid of Elle. So for this one, I will read a synopsis, and hopefully it's not too spoilery from the first book, but basically the Dark School of Magic has always done its best to devour its students, but now that Elle has reached her final year and somehow won herself a handful of allies along the way, it suddenly developed a very particular craving for her. As the savagery of the school ramps up, Elle is determined that she will not give in, not to the mouths, not to fate, and especially not to the scholomance. But as the spectre of graduation looms, a deadly final ritual that leaves few students alive, if she and her allies are to make it out, Elle will need to realise that sometimes winning the game means throwing out all the rules. Wry, witty, endless, inventive, and mordantly funny, yet with a true depth and fierce justice at its heart, this enchanting novel reminds us that there are far more important things than mere survival. So I've gone for this with training because purely it's set in a school, she's going through all these rituals and all that, and obviously if she succeeds and she lives, she's done with the scholomance and all that. So whether you would say that ties in with that prompt is up to you, but I'm saying it is because she, you know, in hindsight, she's in school, she's obviously getting taught things along the way. So that's what I am going with. So they are the 5 books that I will be reading for this readathon. And like I said, like I said, this is from the 1st to the 31st of March, so it's a whole month to read these 5 books, which I think is extremely doable. Like, if I do not complete this, I will be questioning myself on why. Now, this is obviously what I am planning to read at the minute. As I get into the readathon itself, I might possibly change my mind and pick something else out. I do find that if I'm not enjoying the book and I decide to DNF it, I will replace the book to that prompt. But hopefully none of that will happen. So these are the 5 books. I'm really excited. Like, I know full well 3 of these books I will love because this is continuing on from the series that I love. Ruin and Rising, I do love the Shadow and Bone series, and like, you know, I did enjoy the second book. I just got a bit annoyed with Mal. And The Last Graduate, I loved the first book, so honestly I think I'm going to love this one. The other 2 books are, well, I've not read them before, but honestly this is a romance, and this one sounds already appealing to me from what I read. But yeah, so I'm really excited. Go Team Stark or House Stark, and if anyone is participating in this readathon, do let me know in the comments if you are and what path you are taking. And yeah, thank you for watching this video. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you again soon. Bye.